Welcome to the Mental Militia, uniting minds and freeing souls from the bonds of mental slavery and ruling class manipulation.
Another dynamic that I wanted to talk about that goes kind of hand in hand with this presentation, that goes hand in hand with my two masks, same face presentation, is dialectical manipulation does not have to affect both parties. As long as one side buys into a dialectical manipulation, it has already succeeded. So people often say, oh, Germany was manipulated into coming into World War II and starting World War II and invading other countries. That was manipulated by central bankers and even people in America. And I say, well, what was America and the rest of the world supposed to do? Let it invade country by country by country until it takes the whole world? Until it storms into each country and takes the whole world by force? Of course America and other countries had to intervene and stop the Nazis. They had to stop the dialectical manipulation because one country bought into the manipulation. Even if it was a manipulated war, someone still has to step in and stop it. And this dynamic has to be thoroughly understood. I talked about this when I did Two Masks, Same Face. And I want to continue to talk about that next week because we're pretty much out of time for this edition of What on Earth. We left off explaining polarization dialectics. And in the slide, I call it, back in this presentation when I delivered it in 2016, I called it simply dialectic manipulation. I now have refined the term that I call this. I call it polarization dialectics because it polarizes the people into two or more camps of mentality, and it gets them warring with each other. And one of the most important dynamics to understand about dialectics, specifically the Hegelian dialectic, which is what Satanism uses, what modern politics uses, what especially communism uses, what communism was based on, dialectic materialism. Marx based his form of dialectic materialism that he formulated his socialist/communist views with was based upon the work of George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, the creator of the Hegelian dialectic, what I refer to as the polarization dialectic. A dialectic means a false choice between two or more competing choices that someone is presented with and asked to choose between when neither of the answers, neither of the choices will ever get that person to their actual desired result. It's a false series of choices to lead them down the garden path, to lead them on the place that's going to take them to the slaughterhouse instead of where they actually say that they want to go. That only one side of the manipulation aspect of the dialectic, when they're polarizing people into camps, needs to truly remain in a state of mind control and suggestibility for the dialectic overall to become successful. Let me explain what I mean by this, okay? If someone is playing a prank on two school children and trying to get one to attack the other, and they go behind the head of child A and smack them in the back of the head, and then they point to, like this, the child B. And child A now thinks child B did it and goes and attacks child B. Child B, who did not do anything, does not have to be manipulated by the manipulator in order for conflict now to arise between two other parties. Child A doesn't know I smacked him in the back of the head and then went like that, indicating that child B did it. Child B doesn't know that I smacked them in the back of the head or even know why child A is coming and attacking child B. You see, it's ignorance on both parts in a dialectic, but the manipulation of the dialectic, me smacking child A in the back of the head and then pointing to child B, gets them on the hook. And now it gets them taking action that is immoral, unnecessary, erroneous, ill-conceived. And they're starting a new conflict now because of my chaos magic. That's what polarization dialectics are. That's chaos magic in the occult world. Okay? And that's what NEO Feminism is. NEO Feminism is smacking women in the back of the head and the social engineer going like this. It's all guys that just did that, and now there's a gender war. And if you don't get it, you're just fucking dumb. I just can't believe nobody is saying these things. I'm one of the only people saying these solutions out into the world. People who are addicted to completely erroneous ways of thinking and really don't have a lot of mental acumen. What you should do is you should turn a video camera onto yourself or just point your phone at yourself and speak aloud your thoughts. Don't type them. Don't type them out. That's what you want to do. You want to go on the forums, you want to go on the chat rooms, and you want to type like a jackass. And it's just, what it is a verbal diarrhea hose. That's what it is. That's all you do. Your fingers are just like a gaping asshole splattering diarrhea all over everybody else. That's all they are. Okay? And that's why you love chat rooms. You're an anonymous coward. You're a loser little fucking incompetent prick. You're a little impotent prick. And all you want to do is splat diarrhea out with your fucking loser fingers. What you should do, I'll give you a piece of advice even though you don't deserve it, is you should turn a camera onto your own loser face and you should start speaking your ideas and recording them and then playing back to themselves so you could hear what a fucking loser you sound like when you speak. You could hear how dumb you sound when you speak. I back up everything that I'm saying with data and research, and when you understand it, when you listen and you understand, it makes perfect sense, and a light bulb should be going off in your fucking mind, and you should be realizing, wow, I really am fucking manipulated. I really am under a program. I really am under mind control. Folks, I did my shadow work. I'm out of the fucking mind control. When women have been whipped up into a frenzy of programming, should men just go, oh, we know they're manipulated, so let's have absolutely nothing to do with them, or let's just say that their nature is the devil? People are just so fucking dumb. It's painful. It's increasingly painful to me how dumb people are. It's the same thing with the police in our cities. Oh, we should just let the police do whatever they want. There should never be any pushback. Because, oh, the police are mind controlled. They're a manipulated cult. That doesn't mean I'm going to let them take my fucking rights. That doesn't mean I'm just going to let them take my freedom without a fucking battle, and a physical one if it comes to it. You got to realize once a fucking cult member is fully bought into the cult mind control programming, they're going to become a physically dangerous asset in the world for the globalists. This is what they want, dumbasses. We can't just kick back and say, oh, you're just programmed. The first step is, yes, to try to deprogram them. Barring that working, which it may not, you got to fight. And you might have to fight physically and die, maybe. Maybe you might have to fight physically unto the death. And then so be it. Then that's how it'll be. You can't just make excuses for evil. This was part of my presentation called Why We're Losing at Greater Reset 5. You don't just say, oh, these evil people are just manipulated, so I forgive them. Fuck that. That's not real forgiveness. That's you laying down to tyranny like a fucking coward. Fuck that level of pacifism. That'll never be me, and it shouldn't be you either, because it's a big bag of bullshit, and it's not spirituality.
If you think that all is lost, that every dream has faded, that the last light of hope is gone, think again. It's there within you, something that can never die.
You can live again.
The power.
Live again.
To rise. To create. To live again.
You can live again. You can live
Because nothing is more powerful than you.
So, get the point. Only one side needs to buy into the manipulation in order for the divide and conquer strategy of dialectic manipulation to be successful. If you don't understand that, you don't understand the Hegelian dialectic. Why do they target the gender divide? Because there's no bigger dialectical divide than men versus women. It is the only division, since it is the only division in humanity that is split exactly 50-50 when it comes to biological gender or sex. The social engineers have specifically focused their efforts on cultivating this gender war because through it they can create maximum societal tension, instability, and ultimately chaos. They know what they're doing. They know how to do what they're doing. They're very skilled at it. They're not amateurs. They've had practice. They've been doing it for thousands of years. Not 10 years, not a decade, not a handful of years, not a century, not a millennia, tens of thousands of years. They've been manipulating the thoughts and opinions and molding the mindset and worldview of both men and women. And specifically, they love to target women because they feel that not only perhaps they have a better grip and control of the feminine or female worldview, but they know that once they manipulate the woman, they have the family dynamic, the familial dynamic. I don't even want to call it the family dynamic because it does not have to consist of a nuclear family. They have the familial dynamic, which is, it's like the difference between biological sex and how you want to look at the blend of masculine and feminine energy within a single being. The same thing is true when it comes to the familial dynamic. It is not about the actual physical nuclear family. It is about how men and women relate to each other within a society. That is the familial dynamic, which is the core of unity between all of human society. Once you break down the familial dynamic, look at that as mental gender, right? It's a form of cooperation between biological men and biological women in society that has a lot of different factors, dynamics, and characteristics associated with it. Once you break that down, it's a piece of cake to rule over people because the women are largely going to direct that dynamic in society. It's a well-known fact in all of human history that once you have the minds of women, the men and the children follow, because women are going to be the cornerstone of that familial dynamic, especially when it comes to an actual family unit. That's not just the familial cooperative dynamic between men and women, between the sexes, but is going to be the cohesive glue that holds an actual family unit together, which is where societal strength can also come from. It's another source, but it's not the only. Let me be clear about that. The nuclear family, as we're going to talk about, is not the only source of the familial dynamic and familial strength. Okay? It is actually about cohesiveness and cooperation between the sexes, the biological sexes. So let's move on. In this particular presentation, you are going to hear specific solutions. People also erroneously claim PASSIO doesn't offer any solutions. It's because your dumb ass, your loser mind, hasn't listened. You hear what you want to hear. You think what you want to think. You hear little bits and pieces and dribs and drabs, and you think you've heard all of my material, and you haven't even heard one small, tiny, little bit of it. And then you make up your mind according to your own degenerate thoughts, because you don't know how to think, that I haven't proposed any solutions, when the entire body of my work is the solution. This presentation is ultimately completely solution-oriented, and it is not presented to incite a further divide between men and women. It is presented to promote awareness of the manipulation tactics that are being employed and deployed against both genders, not just women, but against men as well, which we will get to later. The final part of this presentation will focus entirely upon solutions that we can implement to heal the divide between the genders and promote unified relationships. See, this is part of people hear what they want to hear. They don't have the discipline of mind, of actual mental thought discipline and present moment awareness to actually hear what is really being said in reality. Instead, they run it through a mental filter that is often a psychological barrier and block that is instilled by the social engineers and the dark occult ruling class, and then it comes into their mindset as them hearing something completely different than what was said. And here's what I want to do moving forward. I should have done this at the very beginning today, but let's do it now. One of the biggest aspects of truly being able to learn and not being a mental dullard and a fucking egotistical moron that can't really truly learn is you have to learn how to quiet the mind. This is why I taught so much about genuine spirituality in the early days of What on Earth is Happening. This is why I spent so much time going over consciousness and what it is and the aspects of consciousness and the characteristics of consciousness and how you can come to know yourself better through shadow work and attempting to learn certain techniques that can help you truly be present. That's why meditation comes in so powerfully handy. It is a powerful tool that if you know how to do it, and most people don't, you will learn how to truly learn. You will open up the aspect of your mind that allows true learning to take place. True learning takes place when the mind has been emptied of competing thoughts. I want to repeat that again. True learning really takes place when the mind has been alleviated of competing thoughts. That doesn't mean don't have any kind of a filter or mechanism to weed out bullshit. What it means is most people have chatter going on all the time. You need to be able to silence that chatter in the mind through meditative work. And I do very little meditation anymore. And here's why. I learned it so well, and I can employ immediately the turning off of thoughts. I can stop thought in my mind whenever I want to. That's the discipline that I learned through practicing meditation so much in my earlier years when I was waking up. Most people never learned it a second. So while they're taking in new information, all their mind is doing is chattering about nonsense and trying to find all kinds of little loopholes and technicalities and pay attention to trivialities, and they're not really present. That's why they don't learn well. That's why they don't integrate the lesson. That's why if you told them an hour after, could you please give me the gist of what I said earlier? Every part of what they repeat back would be wrong. They can't retain any of it. I see this in certain people take place in minutes or seconds sometimes, where you just gave them the information that they need, and it's immediately out of their mind. You spoke it not only a minute ago, and they still can't remember and integrate it. And it's not a memory problem. It's a problem of the mind chattering away endlessly while they should be fully present and fully paying attention.
It's time to rediscover the human soul. Not the mystical, the metaphysical, or the supernatural. We're talking about the source of your abilities, your motivation, your vitality. The thing that makes you, you. We're offered a dream of convenience, but what of self-fulfillment, happiness, peace of mind? No more speculating. No more of this or this, but this. It's time to find out for yourself. To look. To know. It's time to rediscover the human soul.
So let's continue now that I adequately talked about the necessity of true present moment awareness and paying of the two spiritual currencies, time and attention. Let's move on. This presentation is about eugenics. That's what the NEO Feminism agenda is ultimately doing and creating in society. It is a mechanism, and it's a propagation mechanism for eugenics waged by the social engineers, globalists, Satanists, however you want to look at them, the masters of our society. In order to understand how it's a eugenics op, we have to know what eugenics really is and what the word means from its roots, from its etymological roots as a word. One of the best ways of studying what a word really means in modern society is to go back to the origins of the word itself and look at its etymology, which means where did the word come from in its basic building blocks from ancient languages. The word eugenics in English is etymologically derived from the Greek adjective eugenes. So that's it written in ancient Greek characters there. Eugenes means well-born. The adjective eugenes is in turn etymologically derived from the roots, the Greek adjective eu, eu, or epsilon, upsilon, meaning good, and the Greek noun genos. Putting them together, you get eugenos, eugenes, right? Genos is the Greek noun meaning race or stock. So it means literally good race, good stock, good genetics, good breeding, okay? And we're not talking about eugenics here, at least in the etymological definition, in the sense that the Nazis and those who they took actual eugenics practices from, which was largely Americans in the 1920s, we're not talking about it as trying to build up your own race as a master race and present it as such and then eliminate others, although that could be a form of eugenics. Eugenics as an actual word in its base root state simply means that your stock or your characteristics or your makeup is of goodness and strength. So I've told people, and they didn't really understand it when I said this, and I'll say it again, I believe in true eugenics. I am a eugenicist, believe it or not, okay? And many people will hear that and they'll be, that's horrible. No, certain forms of eugenics are horrible, but true eugenics simply means that you want human beings to be stronger. That's all it means. You want them to be of good characteristic stock. And that doesn't mean genetic stock. It can mean genetic stock, but it does not have to mean genetic stock. It means that their internal characteristics as a being are strong and good. So all eugenics means is good breeding, good propagation of strength and characteristics down to the next generations. As the very base meaning of the word, that is all it means. It is in and of itself. It is not evil. It can be turned into evil when we say, this race represents goodness and strength, that race represents badness and weakness, evil and weakness, just because we say so. We're not objectively looking at the characteristics. It's all filtered through our subjective interpretations of what we want. It's not objectively good. And we're going to look at those people over there as the enemy and us as the master race, and then we're going to go wipe them out. I'm not an advocate of that form of eugenics, obviously. That's evil. That's doing something that is immoral and harmful. So, at its very base, eugenics just means good propagation of characteristics. You have to understand that before you move on in your understanding of anything coming after that. Modern day eugenics has become a social ideology advocating the promotion of higher rates of sexual reproduction for people with traits and characteristics desired by its proponents, and reduced rates of sexual reproduction and sterilization for those with undesired traits and characteristics. Now, this is where actual race-based eugenics comes into play. And we're talking about that in the sense of how eugenics was propagated in the early 1900s in the United States, and then eventually spread to Europe and Germany in particular in the 1930s and 40s. So, this is what is meant by race-based eugenics, this part of this definition. And what it means is the people who are going to be in control of the breeding process between human beings are going to try to propagate whatever characteristics that they want to see bred into the next generation of human beings, largely through physical characteristics. So this could mean height, weight, hair color, eye color, skin color, okay? Genetic lineage of their descent and how quote-unquote pure they believe that to be. That's what we're talking about here in this sentence, okay? Let's move on. This practice of race-based eugenics could be described as a main religious tenet of the ruling class. Now, what I'm writing that, okay, that's not part of the definition of eugenics. I'm further now explaining what I mean by modern-day eugenics is part of Satanism. And what they're really doing is they're trying to breed a slave class. So if a ruling class that is already in a position of power and influence and has most of the resources of the world, based on what they already know about the human psyche and how to manipulate it, if they want to create characteristics that are conducive to keeping people enslaved, they are trying to breed characteristics into future generations of human beings that will weaken their characteristics as a being. It will weaken their goodness. It will weaken their strength. So if you really want to be word specific regarding this technique, it is not technically eugenics. I'm describing it as such to give you an overarching view of what people historically mean as eugenics and how in generally it is applied to social engineering. But if you really want to be definitionally specific here, we are now no longer talking about eugenics, we are talking about dysgenics. Dysgenics, the adjective, the suffix dys placed in front of genics, dys means bad, or weakened, or lesser. And then genics would be from the Greek noun genos, meaning stock or characteristics of a being. Okay? So dysgenics means bad breeding, bad passing down of characteristics to the next generation. Okay? You're debasing people. You're degrading them. You're making them lesser instead of greater. It's no longer eugenics, it's dysgenics. You're breeding them down. You're breeding them to a lower level, mentally, physically, spiritually. Okay? So, if you want to really be word specific according to a definition, this would be dysgenics. It's good for the master class. It's bad for the people that they're ruling over because they're weakening them and they're tightening their rule over them.